Two of the biggest takeaways that I got from Purpose Spark were my core values and my purpose statement, why I exist. My core values that I came out with were love, integrity, play, service, and community. I exist to connect, inspire, and unleash the beauty, love, and grit that we experience as we author our personal legend.
Having faith in the process, no matter what's going on, it's part of the greater plan unfolding here. And that brings me a lot of strength to stand within the storms.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast.
Before we begin the next episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask for your support in helping us grow our podcast.
Take a moment to like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're watching this on.
Your engagement helps us to grow our platform as well as allows us to invite even more interesting interviews in the future. I hope you enjoy the following episode and wish that you gain insight, clarity, or knowledge about what it means for you to embrace being human.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast. Today, I'm your host, Scott Stone, and I'm going to be interviewing one of my dear friends, Gregory Bogard. And Greg and I have quite a myriad of history. We met right after I moved to Dayton, Ohio, in the end of 2015. And I like to say we met in 2016 in what I deemed the summer of love. Just a really magical time in Dayton, Ohio, just wrought with entrepreneurship and community and self-expression. Dare I say, boy, just because he was so joyous and self-expressed. I think I met him on the street playing guitar, sharing music with a crowd of humans, and I was just really interested in what this guy was up to and the message of his songs and enticing human. And so we got to know each other, and I got the pleasure of being in one of his first Purpose Spark classes, which we'll get into. So many different memories spanning America and South America and all sorts of other things. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Gregory and his story. So thank you for being here, Greg.
Wow, thank you so much, man. That's a great I'm gonna have to give you $5 for that one. I totally was like a little boy back then, for sure. Life had not fully kicked me in the dick yet at that point. So it was the sweet boy from Dayton, Ohio back then.
It was just so magical to see. I feel like at that time you were playing your honeycomb bee guitar and just sharing magic water and possibility and just so many different things. And so I just want to jump right in and just let these people hear this magic that unfolded. And so tell me a little bit about what your life looked like in 2016, what you were up to, and maybe even kind of the journey that you took to get there.
2016 for me as well. It definitely deserves a name. Summer of Love sounds about right. At that point, I was still in my first year of creating and facilitating Purpose Spark in Dayton, Ohio, and we were doing that out of the Nucleus co-working space, which I was a part of creating with another group of like 12 other entrepreneurs in Dayton since 2015. So I guess we can go back a little bit. My background was in massage therapy, and I had been licensed and working full-time in that craft for 5 years, and I had gotten introduced to an opportunity with this Japanese company that manufactured a medical water ionizer. Essentially, it creates hydrogen water directly from your tap. And I had jumped off the cliff, quit my job, and decided to start selling these machines. This was around October of 2013. And in the first couple months, I didn't have a single sale. And I was like getting really close to fully regretting my decision to quit my job. And, I was about to go beg for it back. And I had been hanging out at this coffee shop called Warehouse 4 in Vandalia. And it was just one magical day. I happened to run into an old high school teacher. His name is Scott Smith. And we had such a great conversation. It had been, probably 6 years since I had seen him. And I remember being so inspired by that conversation. Later that night, when we were both home, I sent him a text message. I said, hey man, how do I get your leadership skills into my life? Because I would like to impact people like you. And so right there, I accidentally got myself into a mentorship with Scott Smith. He said, meet me Friday morning at 8 a.m. at Panera Bread and we'll get started. And So that led on to a 6-month mentorship. We met once a week for 6 months. It radically transformed my life. And honestly, I'm sitting here in Colombia. All the things that transpired after that, I just can't say would have ever come to fruition had it not been for that day meeting Scott Smith at that coffee shop.
Yeah, for anybody who's listening in, if you can hear the bugs in the background, Greg is calling in from the middle of the Sierra Nevada mountains. I guess you could call it a cloud forest for how high it sits up in the mountains, deep in the jungle of South America. And so, a real testament to you can create whatever you want when you get really clear with it. And I think that is the beauty that is Purpose Spark. In a way, Purpose Spark was a beginning for me to really dive deep into a lot of different areas of me. Back in 2014, the year before, I had called off my wedding. And at the beginning of 2015, I was starting to really dive into Tony Robbins, and I went to Unleash the Power Within with my college roommate at the time and just really started to get back into reclaiming my power, but I never really investigated those stories. And it was the container of Purpose Spark and the safety that these people that come together under your guidance really afforded me to look at my past and see what I was willing to set down. And then that led into things like Landmark, and that led into other things. But tell us a little bit about what Purpose Spark is. I know it was something that was created out of those conversations with Scott Smith, and just tell me a little bit about Purpose Spark and what it is for the world.
Purpose Spark is essentially my take on the mentorship that I had with Scott Smith. As I said, that was a 6-month process, and really 4 months of that was meeting with him once a week. I would create my plan of action for that week. We'd check in on how the previous week went. It was most of the time a lot of failures, a lot of things I didn't do, and then creating a new plan for this coming week. And that led me throughout the year of 2014 of, most of my goals were about this water business. And I went from having no sales in the 2 months before this encounter with Scott to reaching, by the end of 2014, reaching my goals that I had set on becoming the top commission rank in the company. I had become the youngest trainer in the world for the organization at that time. I reached my goal of saving $20,000 for that year by earning $30,000 in the month of December. This led to me kind of elevating my lifestyle, making more money than I really thought I would see in that amount of time. And quickly it became less and less fulfilling. The reasons why I started that path started to dissipate as I got wrapped up. I got myself back into the rat race that I was trying to break free from, of having all of these bills. And now, instead of putting in hours, I was just depending on selling these machines every month. Became a big stress. A lot of people put the weight of their success on my shoulders as well. And I was just so young that I wasn't handling it well. So I started looking for what else could be fulfilling for me. That led to the opportunity to create the Nucleus Co-Share. That was in early 2015. Around that time, I started reaching back out to Scott Smith. And, I had just sat with myself, what could I be doing right now that could be fulfilling for my life? I have been on this path where it's just the goalpost gets further and further and further. And when the idea of when I accomplish this thing, then I'll have some measure of happiness. I saw through the financial side of a certain amount of money isn't going to be the thing that makes me fulfilled or happy as well. But I looked at what Scott Smith did for me, and I said, if I could support others in their path of creating a deeper relationship with who they are and starting to create a vision of the life that they want to create and walk with them, ask the right questions, I think that would be a truly fulfilling course of action I could take in my life. So 2015, this is November, after I had gotten groups together and Scott Smith kind of led groups of my friends through the work. I started assisting him with some groups. He finally kicked me out and was just like, hey man, it's time you go do your own thing. So I would have never been prepared for this had I not just decided to pick up the phone, choose some dates, and start calling people and say, hey, on November 21st, I'm starting my first 4-week course. It's I don't have a name for it, but it's like a purpose thingy. And through a couple days of enrollment, 23 of my friends signed up, and we started the first couple groups of what became the Purpose Spark process. And essentially what it has evolved into is a simple model of small group sharing and listening, where I guide the groups through questions about your past, where we look at the significant moments throughout our life that help shape who we are today, taking the past and kind of mining the gold from that, choosing what we want to bring with us into the present, and then from the present, working on things like who are we now? So you create who you are, creating our core values, what is important to us that helps reflect who we are, down to creating a mission for our life that we call like a purpose statement. And your purpose statement will reflect why you exist in relation to being of service to others, which is just something that I feel personally is kind of a principle when we're talking about purpose. To us, it always will include other people. And then finally, in the future, dreaming of the life you want to create and actually taking time to design a game plan to have action steps to start working through that. So what is Purpose Spark? Why Purpose Spark? It's because I believe that right now in our world, there are vacancies inside of human beings. And when we leave vacancies within ourselves, we will be occupied by something else. I'm talking about our consciousness. So whether it is an ideology like religion or politics, or our careers or education, or even our family politics, if it's something that we are adopting subconsciously, then we're losing the opportunity to show up in this life as our full authentic self, which I believe is the magic while we're here. It's for everyone individually to add their unique piece of the puzzle into the greater puzzle of humanity. And so we can finally see what this entire thing looks like.
Yeah, you said something that I think is really potent, and I'll share my takeaway from it. The two of the biggest takeaways that I got from Purpose Spark were my core values and my purpose statement, why I exist. And my core values that I came out with were love, integrity, play, service, and community. And my exist statement was I exist to connect, inspire, and unleash the beauty, love, and grit that we experience as we author our personal legend. And that has stuck through since the very beginning. That was the first one.
Nailed
And
it.
yeah, and I've been in multiple Purpose Spark sessions since then, but it always comes back to that. It always comes back to being a space for people to embrace themselves and to own all of their experience. And I think that's where I birthed this podcast from, was to give people a space to see themselves in others and say, it's okay to be me. And I feel like that is part of my service to the world, is sharing love and doing it in a playful way. And so I'd love for you to share your core values and your exist statement, if you could.
You know, the thing is for me about this work is I really believe that it is designed to be a process that we can use continually and throughout our life again and again to reflect on what the hell's been going on, recreate who we are moment to moment. To me, revisiting this work a minimum once a year or every 6 months, and me personally as a facilitator of this work, I go through it again and again and again, which has only been a super great benefit for me. So my core values have changed often throughout the last 10 years of being involved with this work. I believe as we grow and change who we are and what's important to us in different seasons will change as well. So thank you for asking. And right now I would say my top 5 core values would be family. And for me, family is my relationship with my wife, Carolina. It's my relationship with our son, Benjamin Joe. We call him Ben Joe. And that relationship with my wife, Carolina, is become the number one priority in my life. The measuring of if our relationship is good, then it really doesn't matter what else is going on in my life. However good life could be in the moment, if our relationship is not good, life still kind of sucks. when our relationship is good, life could be rough in the moment, but it's okay. I have somebody to walk through the ups and downs of life with. So family has been the top of my list for quite some time. Faith has actually been one that I've leaned on more and more in recent years. And that is my spiritual relationship to the great mystery of life, to God, to the universe, however you want to relate to it. It's that big unnameable thing that to me is a supportive, positive force in the life, that I'm believing in a greater plan for what's unfolding. So having faith in the process through the ups and downs, that no matter what's going on, it's part of the greater plan unfolding here. And that brings me a lot of peace, and that brings me a lot of comfort and strength to stand within the storms of having this faith that I know all of this is part of a greater plan here. All of these challenges that arise are there for me to grow and to be molded into the person that I'm meant to be, who has the ability to sustain my successes in the future. Sticking with the F's at this point: fun, not taking life so damn seriously all the time, which for me in the past has not always been easy, especially coming into a new chapter in my 30s of becoming a man, making that transition from a boy to a man, becoming a husband, becoming a father. There's a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of holding a vision. There's a lot of hard work and effort. And so if I don't have a core value like fun in there, I can get kind of caught up in the seriousness of life. So being able to keep the lightness, to have that childlike playfulness, having my son Benjamin as a teacher is a great reflection of this core value. So keeping fun in there is an important one. We're at number 4 here. Commitment is a strong one for me. I have, in the past years, truly created a greater confidence within myself, for myself, that I feel like I had missed a little bit, maybe throughout my 20s, of being able to know that what I say I will do, I can do it. And so over the years, I've had these opportunities to take these greater commitments that have given me such stronger freedom in my life of working on discipline to see things through, not just in a short season, but play out over years. For example, you and I started a men's group over 4.5 years ago at this point. Every single month, we show up for each other and we have our call. That commitment has changed my life, not just the context of the men's circles we've had, but the actual commitment to, we're going to show up no matter what's going on in life, no matter where I am in the world, I'm going to make this meeting. This led to other commitments like a life partner in my wife, the biggest commitment that I have made in my life so far. Old or young Greg was terrified of this idea. This Greg is empowered by this commitment. The commitment I have in our relationship has created such a freedom in my life to be able to fully dive into our goals, our dreams. Because when I was missing that partnership, that commitment, it was like there was always a crack in my vessel of this energy seeping out through the subconscious, looking for that person. So the commitment my wife and I have together put a seal in that crack, and that energy that was previously flowing away on this subconscious search has been sealed off, and now that energy is contained and can be really used in creating our lives together. And I would say number 5 in this moment is wonder. And this is a core value that I think kind of represents my brand in general in life. And it is being curious, having a true sense of wonder of the unknown, not just the things that I'm aware of that I don't know, but the things that we don't know that we don't know, the things I'm completely unaware of that I am unaware of my unawareness in? So there's some key questions that I love to use to really embody this core value throughout my life. And number one, what else is possible? Asking a question, not immediately looking for the answer, but asking what else is possible and allowing myself to be filled up with the sense of wonder, which to me is one of the most expansive energies in the universe. And so long as I am sitting in the wonder of what else could be possible, I believe the realm of possibilities continues to expand. And then I get to simply be willing to be surprised by what life has to bring. A few other questions. How does it get any better than this? Who am I supposed to meet? And how did I get so lucky? Again, these are questions that we don't look immediately for the answers, but we sit in the wondering of them and allow life to rush towards us with these possibilities. We are tuning ourselves to be aware to the subtle gifts, miracles, and blessings that life is bringing our way. So those are 5 values for me right now. I'm on a roll for the longest answers of all time on a podcast, but bear with me. Family, faith, fun, commitment, and wonder.
Yeah, these are great. No, I appreciate your thoroughness and your willingness to let us in on a deeper level. It really shows the complexity of life and how I think we all want a space to talk and to be heard. And so I appreciate you giving yourself that gift and letting us witness that. And I was sitting here and I was like, when's he gonna drop the wonder one? Because it's such a beautiful one, and it's been an opportunity for me to invite myself into that, both of what else is possible and who am I supposed to meet. And for a while, it was like, I wonder where the hell Greg's at. I remember in that 2016 Summer of Love, and then all of a sudden, Greg disappeared. And I reached out to you and I was like, where are you at? And you were like, Standing Rock, South Dakota. And I was like, what the fuck is in Standing Rock, South Dakota? And so tell us a little bit about how you got to Standing Rock and what that was for you, and then where it led you.
2016 Summer of Love. Since November 2015, I had started the Purpose Spark work. Over that year, I continued creating these 4-week courses. Throughout that first year, it was 30 different groups with over 150 people from our hometown in Dayton, Ohio, all through word of mouth. And through this process, I got to meet so many people. I was also attending music festivals around that summer for one of the first times in my life of really like tapping into the kind of counterculture of what's going on in some of these more conscious music festivals, seeing workshops available to take place. So I start doing Purpose Spark workshops. This led to me throughout that summer becoming aware of some of the whispers of what was going on in North Dakota and the Standing Rock Indian Reservation. And there was an oil pipeline who essentially was building directly through this native land. There had been a protest started by the Lakota who lived on that land. They sent out the call and the world started answering. At one point, there was like over 10,000 people from all around the world at Standing Rock helping with the protest. And it really created this wild kind of village of thousands of people from around the world set up in tents, camping, all working on common goal, which was protecting the water, which should be an inherent right to all people, and specifically these native Lakota indigenous should have a say in what goes through their land, what disrupts their access to clean water, and so much more. It was a big deal. So I had found myself there. You know, you're asking, where was I? You noticed that I had kind of disappeared. I had kind of found myself in a conflict while I was there. I was so convicted in seeing firsthand these indigenous elder women peacefully standing hand in hand in a road in the face of young, fully SWAT kit gear, young men standing there pointing their assault rifles directly in their face. What a stark image. And I just felt, if this is going on in front of my eyes, how can I go home? You know, how can I leave this place? while this is happening. If there's something I can do, I feel like being here is more important than whatever else was going on in my life. But I started thinking of as well of the commitments that I had made of creating the opportunity, the space of going through the Purpose Spark work. I saw the impact in the community that it was creating within our group in Dayton, Ohio. And I found myself at the river one morning praying, the Cannonball River there in North Dakota, right through the reservation. And I was praying for guidance on what I should do. And that's when this idea of this vacancy within people came to me, because I was thinking about these young men with their assault rifles and standing in front of these indigenous elders. What happens for someone to be able to stand on that side of the road? And this idea came to me that, you know what, there's a lack of awareness, there's a lack of consciousness going on here. And in a greater sense, all throughout the world, within myself, within you, within all of us, there is this battle for our consciousness being waged all the time. If we don't consciously embody our mind, our body, our spirit, then we will be occupied by something else that we can be used as a tool to further another's ideas or agendas. Seeing that as an answer to what the greater issue could be around the world, I received a new conviction that for me, the right thing in that moment, the greatest thing I could do would be to go back home and continue radically and emphatically generating spaces for people to take back that occupancy, to create who they are, to design the life they want to see, to understand their values and their burdens that they have in this life, and really have a process and a way of getting back into that work and onto that path.
It's really beautiful to see what happens as you created that space, because in a way life was like, okay, I guess you're going to need more space. And shortly after, I believe you started heading to South America, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. A few weeks prior, I had been at a music festival in St. Louis, Missouri. It was called Astral Observatory, a one-time, one-off music festival. At that festival, I met some of the most inspiring and important people that are still in my life and I'm connected with today. One of those people was this guy named Ryan, who was a wild dude and was telling me about this project he had in Colombia. He had invited me here. He was creating a retreat center, and I thought it sounded absolutely incredible. Was on my list of things to check out. The following weekend, not in touch with Ryan at all, I was in Minnesota at a music festival called Project Earth, and I was playing music for people that were in line at the porta potties, and down this dirt path walks up Ryan. So we have this second chance encounter at a pretty auspicious time in our lives. And I was like, there's something about this guy. And the following weekend, so the third weekend in a row, I made it all the way out to Standing Rock Indian Reservation. And I had been at the sacred fire there with one of the elders. It was probably 3 a.m. Mind you, this is like a 15-hour drive from where we that previous weekend. And at around 3 a.m., out of the dark, here comes none other than Ryan. And I see this guy come up, and at that point, I was like, okay, I'm listening here. I'm going to come check out your farm. And yeah, it was just a month later that I ended up down in Colombia at this farm for the very first time.
There are so many stories about this area of the world for you that I feel like we could go down. I almost want to save some of them for another episode, because I feel like there are so many stories that we could go back and forth on. But the one teaser I just, and it might be the abridged version, because Greg is just an excellent storyteller. Could you give us a little ditty about getting lost in the lost city, or on the way to, in the middle of the jungle?
Yeah. So I don't know how long this podcast can go, but The abridged version, I'll do my best.
Actually, maybe we should leave that for a second interview because it's so good, and I want to give you the full time.
Yeah, I mean, well, the teaser version of it is, this was on my second trip to Colombia, early 2017. We had just completed a retreat. We incorporated Purpose Spark. There was probably 25 people from 10 different countries attending this retreat, 2 nights with yahe, which is like the Colombian tradition of ayahuasca. And following that retreat, a group of 9 of us were invited to go to the Lost City. And essentially, we had an indigenous friend named Gabo from the Wiwa tribe, which is one of the indigenous tribes of this part of the world. He wasn't taking us on the normal path. He was taking us on an old path. He hadn't been this direction since he was a child. There's been hurricanes. It's a crazy part of the world. It's pure jungle. There was no path by day 2. And we spent over 18 hours hiking with no path, searching for a way forward. We were lost. The climax, we were climbing probably the 7th mountain of the day. Sun starts to set. It starts to rain. We've run out of food and water at this point, and our guide goes missing. I'll leave it there on that cliffhanger. Obviously, I'm here today. There's a resolve there in the story, but it could have easily gone the other way. And the last few times I've given like the full story, it's an hour to 90 minutes of going through everything that took place before and after the situation.
It is an incredibly entertaining and just gripping story in so many different ways. I'm thinking about the 2 fires and the jungle cats and we'll get to that on another one. But you mentioned a word that I want to dive into because it's becoming really hip in today's culture. And I know you've been working with this medicine for a while. And the word was yahe, which, like you said and alluded to, is the Colombian tradition of ayahuasca. I would love for you to share your experience with it, as well as your take on how it's becoming almost sort of pop culture to sit with these medicines, and maybe some of the pros and the pitfalls to it being introduced in such a widespread manner.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate to have been in the spaces to have the opportunity to sit with a medicine like yahe. I remember being in high school, 16 or 17 years old, and one of my favorite songwriters of the time, Ben Lee, came out with this random album called Ayahuasca. Had no idea what it was. It was one of the craziest albums I had ever heard. Led to me like researching a little bit about that. And so for the first time as a teenager, hearing about a medicine like ayahuasca, frankly, it terrified me. And then also a part of me kind of became open to, wow, like there is a realm of things that I truly cannot comprehend. I had no idea were out there and available, and something with such a rich and long history as a plant medicine like this. Now it comes from the Amazon. So when I say the Colombian tradition, we're talking about the Colombian side of the Amazon and those tribes from there. That's who I've had the opportunity to sit with. And I will tell you that my personal story started pretty rough. The very first time I had the opportunity, I was confused and honestly fairly sure that it was not for me following the experience. Yet something had called me so strongly back to Colombia and back to this retreat center. And I had the opportunity to start facilitating Purpose Spark in these plant medicine retreats, which, if you can imagine, just having the opportunity to, leading up to a plant medicine ceremony like this, sit for 4 days in these small groups and reflect on questions from our past, our family dynamics, our challenges that we've been through, start to do the work on who we want to be in the present, start to identify the dreams we have of the future. It is an amazing marriage within kind of a psychedelic medicine ceremony to, on the front end, get to do a lot of this deep work. So we just found that it worked really well. And I was obviously a novice within the yahe experience. I have never been on the facilitation side of that. It's not something I am seeking to do. But it just so happened that the work I had been offering was a beautiful marriage with that. So when I had the second and third opportunity, it was within a retreat that I had been facilitating Purpose Spark. And that first ceremony from that retreat, again, pretty confusing experience for me. I just really was uncomfortable and had a lot of resistance to the nausea and feeling sick in my body, and just convinced by the time the sun came up that that's it. I gave it a couple tries. This is definitely not for me. And then something happens throughout that day leading up to night 2 of the ceremonies in that retreat, and where it was like, you've been a part of this retreat. You should see it through. I know it's not something that you really feel like is for you, but you're here. It's an interesting opportunity. Why not just make it through one more night and see what happens? And so I went into that second night ceremony of that retreat. This was the third ceremony I've had at this point. And I don't know if it was the fact that I had already let go of this needing to be something for me. I had dropped my expectations. I decided to do something differently in this specific ceremony, which previously I had drank a cup and went and laid down, kind of just waiting for something to happen. This time I was like, maybe I could be more engaged, drink the cup, sit upright in meditation around the fire, and just being more engaged with this idea to kind of meet the spirit of this medicine halfway, rather than like just expecting something to come in and do it all for me. And that night I had kind of a truly breakthrough, unbelievable experience, and made it through that sunrise and realized, wow, maybe there is something here for me. And from that point, I have been coming down to Colombia for the last 8 years, and at a certain time was spending most of my time here, having throughout these years many opportunities to sit with the medicine. And for me at this point, it's a pretty personal experience where I'm at within the context of, all the opportunities of working with this in the States and all around the world. I don't want to have a strong opinion on good or bad. Me personally, I just don't feel like I would ever recommend it to anyone.
100%.
It doesn't feel like something I should try to be convincing anyone to do. I believe that it is one of many tools to kind of access these different altered states, which we can receive a lot of benefit from. It's one way to do that. It's not for everyone, but it's for everyone kind of situation. And so for me, yeah, I'm just not interested in convincing anybody that they should do it. It's a very personal thing. I feel super fortunate and do believe that I've received a lot of benefit, not just from the medicine itself, but having a sense of ceremony or ritual in my life. That is a big part of the process that I find benefit in my life from, taking time out of the busyness to enter a sacred space, to jump into the unknown, to kind of eagerly meet the great mystery and see what could be there for me to learn, to cleanse myself in a physical way. One of my favorite things about the medicine is the purging that it can encourage, which I was so resistant to in the beginning, but have become to truly love and appreciate as a significant reason for me to still come back to it. It is such a practical way to have a physical release of our potential energetic and different blockages that we might not even be able to comprehend. It's like we're physically releasing this stuff through a purge, and it's incredibly powerful in my experience. So that's where I'm at. I don't recommend it to anybody, but it's done wonders for me. And the thing is, if somebody feels called and approaches me, is curious, is directly asking me for support in helping them have an opportunity to sit with the medicine, then I'm more comfortable in supporting and helping somebody. But I'm not going out of my way to tell someone they should do it. You got to ask me, and you got to ask me twice, so I know you're really in. And at that point, it's like, I'm not a gatekeeper of any of this, but I'm also not a activist or advocate thinking everyone in the world should be doing this. I think there's positive things going on around the world related to people having access to this medicine. I also think, like anything, it can be exploited to a degree. and there could potentially be some unsafe environments and outcomes related to giving more people access to this serious medicine in an irresponsible way.
No, I appreciate your thoroughness on that answer, and I stand alongside you in a lot of what you said. As a practitioner of plant medicine, I am not what I would call a proponent or an advocate for it. I mean, in the sense of like, I'm not out here telling people about you should do this. I think that's a very bold move, and I think even breathwork lies in that same category. I hear a lot of times where people go do breathwork ceremonies, and they're like, I heard it last week. Someone was like, I went to a breathwork ceremony, and I was like, how was it? They were like, it was so intense. And I was like, did they give you any preparation or understanding of what you're going into? She's like, no. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, that's hard to like have the door opened and not have a way back or just like know what's happening. And so I agree. I think I have found a lot of benefit in it, and it is not for people who it's not called to. And I think to your point, the ask me twice thing is a good rule of thumb. And for those who it is called to, let the call be there, let it maturate and investigate it if it keeps beckoning. And if not, that's okay. There's a lot of different ways to access deeper states of consciousness. Not everybody needs to do breath work or an ice bath. Some people it's knitting or walking in the forest, and I think that's perfectly fine.
Well said.
I want to do a little timeline jump here and jump to, you mentioned earlier about us starting a men's group, and it coincided with COVID, which was a tough time for everybody. I called it the Great Pause. Some call it the Great Reset. We all learned a lot, and we're all still continuing to learn a lot from that time. And I would love for you to share a bit about why you reached out to me to start that men's group, and also some of the things that came from it.
Wow, COVID, the quarantine, all of it, such a impactful time in my life. I think a lot of people would say the same. I hope for a lot of people at this point, there's been some kind of full circle positive things that have come out of that. I know it caused a lot of people to transition, whether they wanted to or not, in kind of their life path. And hopefully some people have found that it's been a positive thing. And I think in my case, at this point, I can see now looking back, even though I went through some of the most difficult times in my life through that period, I wouldn't change it. I think it really helped shape the man I am today and kind of the path I'm on. So I had been leading a Purpose Spark retreat here in Colombia at this farm around the time that the quarantine started. With our group, we finished our last day at the farm. We were going to spend the final 2 nights on the beach, and we got down to the mountain town of Minca. Everyone got on their phone, and everyone's flights were canceled. The government was calling every foreigner to leave the country. They're closing the border in 2 days. We called the audible. We stayed in the city. We got everyone's flights rebooked. We completed our retreat in this really strange way, in this really strange energy of like this looming quarantine and shutdown. And we were all in this small room above a restaurant, my buddy's restaurant, like staying the night. Pretty interesting. But once we got everybody out, I came back to the farm. I did my full quarantine here. At that time, I was also working with the band Satsang. It's one of the things that I do. I'm a tour manager for the band Satsang. And of course, after that retreat, there was a spring tour set to happen. It became canceled. So here I was finding all the things I had built my life around being canceled. Unable to host retreats, unable to gather and do small groups, unable to go on tour and share music. Yeah, coming off that retreat energy, I actually was inspired immediately to start offering an online version of Purpose Spark for the very first time, which we did. And we did some Purpose Spark online retreats. We actually had a really positive experience with that. Within a few months, had a couple hundred people go through those online retreats with us. And through that time, I had started to become extremely burnt out on the internet. You know, this is an election year. This is the quarantine. This is Black Lives Matter. All of these things culminating at one time, and a number of other things personally that had happened at that time. That's probably for another podcast as well. I was so sick and burnt out of the internet, and I wanted to get off of it. And not only that, I had just kind of hit a stalemate in the passion that I had, kind of the momentum that we were riding. The wind had been taken from my sails, and I needed a reset, man. I was really sitting with the question of, what am I going to do? And that's when I reached out to you, Scott, and our friend Leo, and with our good buddy Adam Elfers as well. And it was out of a need for me to sit in council with other men and simply be able to share and talk about what we're going through. And that's what happened. It was a quick process, presented the idea, and probably a week later, we launched it.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the need to sit with other men. As I've done my work over the past couple of years, what I realized is I'm not actually interested in having women hold my emotions if they're not my therapist or sometimes my partner. Because it's actually, as a man, I want other men to hold the door, to have this, to model the strength that it is safe for me to go into all of the range of my emotions. And that was, for me, the beauty that was that container. And for the first 3 years and 9 months, I led that charge. Leo came on board, but shortly after, because of COVID and other things in his life, dropped off. And it wasn't actually until Chester died that I set that down. And I remember the following month, would have been October, I came into the men's group and I was like, fuck it, I'm done. Like, I'm not leading this anymore. And you so graciously stepped up and was like, okay. As I was fucking bawling in tears of just like, I can't do this now. Like, I need someone else to carry the torch because I need to be carried. And it was such a great reminder for me that I also get to have the space held, because there's something really powerful about holding the space versus being held in the space. And I think that's been a really beautiful thing that's come through this men's group, is allowing each other to carry that torch sometimes. And it is such a testament to what is needed in the world right now by men, for men, from men, which is support. And I really, really deeply, strongly believe in that. Leo, my roommate, is starting a fatherhood circle now, because he sees the opportunity for men to be supported around the journey of being a father. And I say that from the standpoint of, it is in this being supported that we allow such a deeper level of life. And I'll share a little bit of this as a preface, but then I'd love for you to expound upon it. Is I remember in the men's group, I don't even remember what year it was, maybe 2022, 2021, when you came into this group kind of glitter-eyed and excited about, like, I met this woman at the farm. And just tell me a little bit about the journey that has been meeting Carolina and all that's ensued as a product of that.
The men's group has been an unbelievable way to kind of document or chronicleize my life month by month over the last 4.5 years. And we started that process when I was extremely low and went through an entire renewing process of building myself back up after that low time, doubling down on going back to the farm as a partner to continue creating the vision of building this retreat center here. And it was shortly after I made that decision to double down. This was early 2021. I had been back at the farm for a few months, and this Colombian woman showed up as a guest. Was very professional, received her and her friend well. We had a nice group at the farm at the moment, took care of everyone. But she had her own podcast happening at that time. She had asked me to be interviewed for her podcast related to the farm. Did that, but when we sat down to do the podcast, I was like, hold on, if you're going to interview me, I'd like to know a little bit more about you first. And some sort of spark was created there. And we remained in touch. And from then, there was a second time where she came. We were more engaged. I left on a tour. We were not in communication. When I got back, I had found out that she moved to Minca. And at that point, kind of the lights went off on my head of there's like a real possibility here, which is, I think, when I started bringing up what was going on more in the men's group. So yeah, I just remember every month having an opportunity to talk about my experience in this new relationship. It felt really good. All the signs, all the flags were green. I remember going through the process of meeting her family. I remember talking with you guys about the process of bringing her to Ohio, spent like a Christmas with my family, got to introduce her to a lot of you guys. And it was after that where the following men's circle we had, it was like, okay, boys, I'm going on tour. I'm going to stop in Ohio. At the end of tour, I'm going to make a ring. I'm going to go propose to this woman, and I'm going to put a baby in her. Following circle after that, I had been trying to create this perfect plan of a proposal, and we ended up at one of our friends' farms. We had the men's circle on that night, so I was upstairs, and below everyone was having like a pizza party, and I remember like holding these rings, talking to you guys about this thing. And there was a question that you asked on that specific night that I'll always remember. And the question was, what are you worrying about right now that if you changed the adjective or the verb of worrying about it to care? What if instead of worrying about this thing, you replace the word with caring for this thing? And I was worrying about the perfect proposal. And then when I realized, like, what do I actually care about? And it's like, well, what I care about is that Carolina knows that I truly love her and that I want her to be my wife, that I want to be her husband, that I want to really commit to building our lives together. And I was like, okay, boys, I'm hanging up and I'm going downstairs right now and I'm going to propose right now in this moment. And you guys cheered me on. I hung up, I went down, I did the thing. We got engaged, and a couple months later, we were pregnant.
It's so beautiful to see what happens when you live your life intentionally. And I remember coming out of Purpose Spark, this thought came to me that was, it's not easy. Living your life on purpose isn't easy. It's worth it. And I feel like the way in which you carry yourself with intention and fervor shows that you can live a very enjoyable life and call in the things that you want. And it's really beautiful to have witnessed that unfold both with your wife and now your son, Benjo, and to have gotten to spend some time with him on the farm and in Ohio, and just to see the life that you're creating for yourself. It's really wonderful. And I think it speaks a testament to men around the world who, if they have a dream, go after it and see and sit in with what's in the way and see how to love our way through that is really beautiful. And I really appreciate your model of that for me in my life, and then also the men in your community and the ones who've yet to meet you in your work and who've yet to come to this farm. Open invite to anybody who wants to experience one of the most magical places in the world, the heart of the world, according to the Kogi tribe, the top of the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas. It is a second home to me. It is similar in a different way to my current home of Maui. Less air conditioning, and well, not that there's air conditioning in Maui, but unless you're balling. But just a truly beautiful, heart-opening space that has been such a treat to be on that land. It is where I've spread some of Chester's ashes. It is a truly special place. I feel like there are so many things I still want to talk to you about, and most definitely to come back for a second one. But I think some other things that are really pertinent to the timing of this one and the offerings that are currently going out. Tell us a little bit about Poema and the upcoming retreat that we have in January.
You know, as I mentioned early in my story, around 2016, I was invited here by a guy named Ryan. I immediately started working and supporting the retreats and offering Purpose Spark in the retreats that took place here. I did that for a few years. Around this time of 2019, Ryan actually had a change in his calling and his path, and he left the project. And it wasn't long after that, late 2019, I was given the opportunity to become a partner, one of the owners of this place. Yeah, over these years, Ryan had named it Aloha. We've been in a rebranding process over the years. After COVID, we closed down for a few years, actually. And it wasn't until last year that my wife and I moved back to the farm. And we currently have one other partner, Max, and his wife, Lena, who we're continuing this vision of creating a retreat center. I mean, it's what it is. It already exists. And we have an incredible retreat center. There's a beautiful temple behind me. We have cabanas here. Well, we've got chickens, we've got ducks, we've got howler monkeys that visit daily. We've got toucans and all these incredible wildlife surrounding us, living in harmony with nature. We operate with the principles of permaculture, and our name is Poema. And kind of our tag that kind of represents a vision of what we're offering here is write your own story. So we've created a place in the Sierra Nevada mountains here. We work closely with the indigenous and with our neighbors in the area with the goal to become an asset to the people who live around us, to give back, to be good stewards of the land, seeing ourselves less as owners, but more kind of guardians and stewards of the space here. Previous to us starting this project, the farm had been used for mules and for growing marijuana. All of the trees had been cut down. So we've been on this mission to regenerate this land and help to create a beautiful space for people and a beautiful ecosystem for the nature around us to enjoy, and just, a special little microcosm of magic and intention, nature, healing, and for people to come and deepening that relationship with who they are, growing, learning, studying, sharing knowledge. It's a place for that.
It is truly magical. I stayed there for a month last July 2023, and woke up every morning to toucans and toucanettes and different birds flying across the opening of my cabana, overlooking these vast mountain ranges of pure lush jungle. It is fantastical. It is otherworldly. And, it reminds me of the Joe Dispenza quote: if you want to change your personality, the makeup of who you are, your habits, actions, and routines, you have to change your personal reality. And I think that is one of the reasons I find retreats so enticing and interesting and effective, is because for a week or more, you remove yourself from the natural routines, the cues, the subconscious patterning of your existence to ask yourself, is this what I choose? Right? It's because if you aren't changing it, you're choosing it. And I think there's something really powerful to what we did both in July and what we will do again here in January with this retreat, combining the Purpose Spark process with breath work, with community, with locally sourced organic foods, with song and dance around the fire, with a whole lot of love and purpose and passion and accountability. And I think that's a big part of it, is the integration process of supporting these individuals to go on their path after they consciously create their future by looking at their past and living in the present moment. And so, is there anything you want to share about whether it's the last retreat or the upcoming, or to speak directly to anybody who's interested or on the fence?
Maybe it was part of what you said, Mr. Joe Dispenza had mentioned, this idea of, to really understand what's going on, you've got to get out of your bubble. To get in control, you've got to get out of control. To understand what's going on, you've got to get out of that situation and be able to see it from the outside. So I truly echo that sentiment of, when we are doing transformational work, there is something incredibly special and powerful about going somewhere we've never been, especially a place like Colombia, where there's a different culture, where there's a different climate, there's different plants and insects and animals, different people, different culture. I just truly believe, I don't know how to necessarily sell retreats or experiences like this. I'm learning in that process. I just have a deep confidence in anybody that finds themselves here with us at our farm, specifically for one of the retreats that we offer, that they're going to have an incredible, life-changing experience that they'll treasure for years and years and years to come. And that what will happen at this retreat will create lasting impact in their lives. This is an opportunity for anybody who's looking for an adventure, that's looking for a change, that's looking for some fresh magic, some fairy dust sprinkled on top of your life. If you feel stuck, feel like you just need to create a change, I really believe that this is an incredible opportunity for you, for anybody who feels like they're at maybe a crossroad in their life. I think this work and this week and the experience that we offer is for anyone, whether you are just beginning your journey into kind of a spiritual life or awakening to your own consciousness, or if you consider yourself a master or a guru, or you've been on your path for 20 years, this is an incredible opportunity to get a new reset to that process or to freshly start, if that's where you're at.
Yes, I think that's a great place to leave it. The last thing I want to offer up is where people can find you on the internet, in the jungle, your music. I think we forgot to mention that you are a phenomenal singer-songwriter. Where can people experience Gregory Bogard?
Oh, thank you, Scott, for that. I am a songwriter of sorts. My name is Gregory Bogard. If you search that on whatever streaming platform you have, you'll find some of my music. I'm on week 97 of writing an original song every single week. So yeah, creeping up on 100 originals written in the last 100 weeks. And I started releasing those songs with a blog post on my Substack. So you can follow along that journey at xogb.substack.com. Anything related to Purpose Spark, and specifically the retreat we have coming up here in January with myself and Scott, my wife, and our dear friend Adam, you can go to purposespark.com and check out a little landing page related to the retreat. There is an opportunity to click one of those links and you'll get a full Google form that has all of the details related to the retreat and gives you an opportunity to give us some information so that we can reach out and be in touch and have a direct one-on-one conversation about the possibility of joining us, whether it's for this retreat or one in the future. Besides that, Instagram, Gregory Bogard, Facebook, Gregory Bogard. That's it.
OnlyFans, Gregory Bogard.
Yeah. Yeah, don't tell my wife.
I really appreciate you taking the time for this, Greg. I know the complications that it comes with to live in the jungle and take 4 or 5 to get this on the books, but here we have it. The 5th episode of the Embracing Human podcast here with Gregory Bogard, coming live out of the jungle of the Sierra Nevadas north of Minca in South America, Colombia. Thank you so much, Greg, for spreading your magic, for being a contribution and influence to my life, for being a dear brother and friend, and for being you.
Absolute pleasure. It's an honor to be in this podcast with you. Thank you for being in my life. For anybody listening, Scott Stone is an absolute legend. Got to experience him and his extreme rocket ship path that he's been on since 2015, around that time when we met. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch you grow and to the man that you are now. I have so much respect for you and appreciation. You've truly been there for me in some of my lowest moments, and you've been there throughout the process, witnessing everything in between, all the highlights, all the ups and downs, everything, the birth of my son, all of it. So you're a brother to me. I think you're doing incredibly great, powerful work in this world, and anybody that's connected with you is a friend of mine and is surely going to benefit from having an interaction with a brother like Scott Stone.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in, for giving us your intention and attention here with us today to hear another story of an amazing human. If you want to find and follow more, you can find me on social media at The Frozen Yogi. You can find our podcasts on any streaming platform. And please reach out. Please let us know if there are some amazing humans you want to hear from, you want us to interview, and anything else. We'd love to stay in touch with you guys. And thank you for being here. Aloha.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the interview today. And if you haven't already done so, please like or follow us on whatever platform you're listening to, and let us know if you have any questions or comments or requests of future interviewees.
And we hope you find this inspiration, the clarity, and the direction to fully lean into being human. whatever that means for you. Aloha.